Again, my guest today is Pakou Hang, Chief Program Officer at Vote.Run.Lead. She has amazing biography, and I don't think that I can tell everything right at the beginning, but I would say that she graduated from Yale University, where she studied political science and specifically focused her research on revolutions in Latin America. She also received a master from University of Minnesota in political science with specialties in political psychology and voting behavior. She successfully ran the 2002 campaign of Me, Moi, the very first among American elected to a state legislature in America, and thereafter served as a deputy political director to Senator Paul Wellstone in 2002 re-election campaign. She also served as the election protection director for the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the national field director for Children's Defense Fund, and ran for public office herself. Her history as an organizer and campaigner and her skills as a political scientist and movement leader make her an ideal addition, to the leadership team of Vote.Run.Lead. Can you tell me more about the organization of Vote.Run.Lead? So how did it come into being and how does it work today?
Sure. Well, Vote.Run.Lead is a national nonprofit. We train women to run for public office and to win. And our mission is rooted in unleashing the political power of women as voters, as activists, as elected leaders to make our democracy more reflective and more inclusive. We started actually as a program of a larger organization called the White House Project way back in early 2000. And in 2012, we were spun off, and we wanted to specifically look at what we could do to build the capacity of women in their leadership journey and really to change the democracy, because we know that the way that democracy was created in the United States and often the structures that prompted up were not built for women, and they certainly don't support women. And so we wanted to interfere that process and make it a democracy that, like I said before, is much more reflective and inclusive.
Always the interesting thing for me is what are the key issues that you have noticed when it comes to a political engagement of women in USA? What makes them engage and what makes them hesitate?
Sure. Well, let me start with the latter about hesitation. We know, and studies have shown, that over and over, women still have a lot of challenges when it comes to accessing political power and specifically running for public office. We know that women don't have as many access to the political donor networks. We know that women have a hard time accessing just the rules of the game and the networks of who knows who, that they often call it the information network. And then we also know that women continue to struggle with time. And by time, I mean that women are continuing to do disproportionately high amounts of child rearing or housework. We do not have gender parity yet when it comes to kind of private sphere responsibilities. And we saw that so clearly, right, during the pandemic, when so many women came out of the workforce because they had responsibilities at home, whether it was taking care of their family, their elderly parents, or their children. And so these barriers continue to challenge women to be able to seek more political involvement or public office. And I think that, until we really recognize that, and until we become intentional in dismantling some of those barriers, we really won't get to the kind of women leadership that we desire and that we need, quite frankly. But I also think at the same time that there are a lot of opportunities, and I think a lot of these opportunities are fueled by women themselves and by also other women in public office. And by this, I mean that, women, the way that we have been socialized in this country, women have always been problem solvers, right? Women are the ones ones who are, whether it's their family or their community, they're the ones that see a problem. And then often they're the ones that are organizing people to try to fix that problem, whether it's an issue with childcare, they organize their girlfriends to create some kind of childcare co-op, or maybe there's an issue around safety. They're the ones who go and talk to the teacher to say, how can we make sure that, we don't allow for bullies to persist at school? And so women have always been these kind of community problem solvers. And I think especially in this moment when there are so many challenges facing our communities, our world, with the pandemic and with the economic downturn, and just with the realization that we need to have a more inclusive world, women, without being able to stop themselves, are emerging to be those leaders that we need. And this is the opportunity where women are striking and seizing that opportunity.
But what are the most common challenges and obstacles that women in politics face during the election campaign, but also when they're elected to a political position?
Right. So I mentioned before that there are these structural barriers that still persist, right? Access to money, access to information, and disproportionate amount of work that's still required in the private spheres. But I also think that there is an element, what we often call the confidence barrier, where women are thinking, maybe when I finish my PhD, that's when I'll run. Or maybe when my kids are all grown up and they've graduated from college, that's when I'll run. And part of this is just the lack of confidence. And that comes from the way that our society has been, socializing women to think that, you just look at the makeup of Congress, and disproportionately, we have white men, especially, right, in positions of power, even though they're not the majority in this country. And so I think that representation matters. And when you look at who's in power and they don't look like you, then there's a sense of like, maybe I don't belong, right? Or when I become like them, that's when I'll be able to belong. And, that's something that I think women still struggle with. And a Vote.Run.Lead, we totally are working to dismantle that. And that's why one of our most important mantra is that you are enough. Just the way you are enough. And because you are enough, when you decide to run, you should run as you are. And we really do believe that that is the winning secret. That's the secret to winning.
In Bosnia and Herzegovina, my country, war ended in 90s, and we still feel the consequences today. What worries me is a strong expansion of patriarchy that stifles women's political action. And I'm even more frightened by the minimal existence of the system that empowers and supports women their political engagement. How has Vote.Run.Lead worked to create a powerful platform that gives powerful results? We need something like that here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We want to find out more about that kind of platform.
Right. Amra, that's such a good question. And I think that is like the $1 million question that so many people are trying to study and try to figure out. I want to answer that in two ways. First off, I think that strategically, we need both a grass tops and a grassroots strategy. So when I say grass tops, I mean, like, these are the things that Vote.Run.Lead is doing, where we are trying to recruit women and grow their political capacity, grow their leadership skills, so that when they decide to, they can be in that space, where opportunity and skills, create success, right? But then we also need a grassroots strategy where whether they're women or men or folks in the community, but there has to be support among voters and among folks on the ground to say, hey, we do believe that a woman's type of leadership, or different type of leadership than what we have right now, is something that we're eager for, right? Because studies have shown that women do govern differently than men. Women are more collaborative, they're more civil towards each other. Women promote public policy that really supports the most vulnerable among us. And so there has to be support among the voters for that type of leadership. And you can call it a new progressive with a small p type of leadership, you can call it a women's type of leadership, but we have to have support for that, right? At the same time that we're building the scaffolding or the pipeline for women to seize opportunities and run and win. So that's one way I want to answer that. But another way is that we have to think about how we need good public policy that promotes women in these sectors. So, for example, one of the struggles that we hear from women when we're trying to say, who, do you want to run? What are the reasons why you don't want to run, or what scares you about running? Often we're hearing about, well, I have small children. Can I run? Do I have childcare that's affordable and high quality to help my children? Or, I'm struggling, with housing. If I want to run, what am I going to do? Will I be able to make enough money in my job to pay for my housing? And so we have to have public policies that support all different types of people to run in public office, to stay in public office, and to govern. And then we also have to have champions, people who are currently in power, whether that's a kind of power in the actual entity of government, or whether it's power in terms of like party leaders or influencers who are promoting these different types of leadership qualities that women exhibit. And then I think lastly, we need women. We need actually people to stand up and say, no, I'm going to seize this opportunity. And that's where Vote.Run.Lead is working. But we really need those other elements, right? We need public policy reform, and we really need, just the desire to have change.
Definitely. And thank you so much for this answer. Can you tell me more about Run 51 campaign?
Sure. So Run 51 is a surefire campaign for us to create change in this country by focusing on the state legislature. Right now, there is a disproportionate amount of men, and especially white men, who are in political office, from the congressional level to the local level, and certainly at the state legislative level. But the truth is that women are the majority in this country. And in many states, women are the majority, but there's a gap between their makeup in the population and their makeup in the state legislature. And so we want to make sure that in the next 2 electoral cycles that we get to not only parity, but majority in state legislatures in some key states, including Minnesota, Georgia, and New York. And we hope to glean learning from those states so that then we can create a playbook for the rest of the country. We really believe that if we can get, a majority of women leaders in the state legislature in the whole country, that we will have transformation in our democracy. Now, some people might be wondering, like, Amra, why the state legislature, right? Why not go to Congress, or why not start with the school board and have like uber hyper local politics? And we think the state legislature is the place to be, because actually that's where the fight is around a lot of the policies that we care about, whether it is like childcare or housing, whether it's the expansion of voting rights. Those fights are being fought at the state legislature, so that's where we need to be. Secondly, state legislatures are not so big that the campaigns are overwhelming, and they're not too small where maybe you and just a friend can run them. They're the perfect size to really experiment with, jumping into public office. And not only that, but in many state legislatures, every 2 years, there's some type of election, whether it's for the Senate or for the House. And so, we imagine that a woman can run, and then maybe she wasn't as successful, she can, learn from her lessons and then run again. And so we really think of state legislatures as laboratories for democracy. And then secondly, thirdly, a lot of time people are saying, well, women can't be leaders. We don't see them as leaders, they don't have the emotional kind of fortitude to be leaders. But the great thing about the state legislatures are that there are many positions of leadership. So you can be a majority leader or a minority leader. You can be the speaker, you can be a committee chair. And so we think that if we can get more women into state legislatures and they can occupy those different leadership positions, that visually we can see, oh, wow, this is how women lead. Oh, this is amazing. Oh, there are all these women leaders. And so we can change the kind of the myth that women are not viable leaders. And then fourthly, I said before, women just govern differently. And, I know, Amra, in the United States right now, I'm not sure in your country, but there is a hyper partisanship in this country. People are just so stuck into their respective groups. They're not working together. They're not seeing the larger goal, but women do, right? And so we think that women are exactly the leaders that we need for this moment. And then lastly, state legislatures have been historically wonderful kind of stepping grounds, or just steps in general to higher office, whether it's for an executive position like a mayor or a governor, or whether it's to Congress. And so we want, more women in that pipeline, and that means focusing at the state legislature. So that is the reason why we launched Run 51, because we want to have not just parity, but majority, women majority in all these state legislatures all across the country.
And that's a perfect idea, example, and everything for people in my country. For the end, if right now some woman is watching this our conversation, right, and thinking about running for next elections, but she's not so sure and confident about herself, what would you say to her?
Sure. So my first advice and my most important advice is that you are enough. And just the way you are, based on your lived experiences, based on all the organizing that you've done informally already, that you are enough and you are exactly what your community needs right now. And so when you decide to run, not if, but when you decide to run, please run as you are, because that authentic voice is what people are hungry for. I would also say that if you are thinking about running, get out there, right? First of all, check in with yourself and your family and your networks, and let them know these are your ambitions. Don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to have ambitions, right? Let the people around you know. And then secondly, go out and start learning. So if you want to run for city council, go to some of those city council meetings. If you are interested in running for, parliament, go out and start reading, start following a writer who's writing on issues or dynamics at the parliament, right? Reach out to your political parties, reach out to your current elected officials, find out who they are, and what are the day-to-day operations in that position. So begin to find out and research where you want to go, and then get involved and jump in. And I would say lastly, that don't be afraid and don't forget to have fun. Right? There is an amazing social anthropologist in the United States, Margaret Mead, and she said, at the end of the day, it really only takes one person to change the world, but it's a lot more fun with friends along the way. And so women are agents of change, and just the way you are, you can make transformations. But reach out to your friends, reach out to your network, because it's a lot more fun with a group of girlfriends to be along on the journey.
I think you are the first person who mentioned the fun, and I think it's really important, because it is not necessary that we always have like this serious face when we are speaking about and talking about politics. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you, to find some new ways, some new thoughts about engaging women in politics. And I am so amazed by your work, your personally, and your as an organization, Vote.Run.Lead.
Thank you, Amra, and thank you so much for jumping in with this conversation and being a leader among the women in your country to put light to these issues. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you once again. And please stay with us till the next time.